Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to mount and dismount your Lectric XP. This technique may not work on all bikes and is not intended to work on all bikes, but I found it work pretty well with the XP. First of all, make sure you have your seat at the proper height. Now, I'm going to say that with a little variance. First being safety first and efficiency being second. But if you feel at the most efficient height for your seat you don't find it comfortable, then it becomes a safety issue. And if that's an issue, then don't set it at the most efficient height. But I'm going to start out by showing what the most efficient height is. The most efficient height, or a good place to start, is when you have the pedal in the lowest position. Put the heel of your foot on the pedal and stiffen your leg. It should lock in place. Your seat should be tight to your derriere. Mine right now is slightly low, but I feel comfortable with it. You may feel more comfortable with it at a little higher or a little lower height, but this is basically where you should start. And where that ends up, you have the ball of your foot on the pedal. It should be a slight bend in the knee. Once you get that height established, then you'll set up. Okay, first of all, the Lectric XP is different from most bikes. Most bikes either have the traditional male bike, which has a top tube up here, or your traditional girl's bike, which has a tube down here, which has a step through. Well, the XP is about halfway in between. It's not really a step through, but then it has this bar up here. So there are two ways to get yourself on the bike. Let me show you first how high this bike is above the ground. You may not know that much about bicycles, but notice on the XP, the crank itself sits up, I would say probably a good inch and a half higher than a normal bike. Maybe an inch or inch and a half. So what that means is when you're sitting on the saddle, your feet are going to be off the ground to the extent that you can't touch the ground. At the best, you can only tiptoe to the ground, which is not good. It doesn't give you good balance. So first of all, do not start or stop sitting on the seat. You should be off the seat and standing on one of the pedals when you start off and stop. As far as mounting the bike, as I did through the step-through method, which you can do on this bike. But in either case, what you want to do, you want to angle this bike. When you're getting on and off of it, you want to angle the bike so that it's not as high. So what you do is, you bring it down a little bit. I can pull that foot through the step through. The more traditional way that most people will mount a bike, bikes with a high bar, they will swing their legs over the rear wheel. What you want to do then is angle the bike towards me. Take your leg, pull it over. Now I'm straddling the cross tube. Y'all need to overlook my awkwardness a little bit because I've got two bad knees, a bad back, and I'm not as young as I used to be. I may look a little stiff and rigid, but if you're younger than I am, you probably have a lot less awkwardness in dismounting. But as we get older, we have a little more difficulty doing things. Our range of motion is not what it used to be. To dismount, you can either dismount the same way by pulling that leg over and coming off the bike, or you can mount it over the step through. I find it easier. My joints work better that way. So my wife can't do it that way for some reason. Even being shorter than I am, she can swing her feet over better than I can, but she can't step through. So you've got to find out which way can fit you the best. But once you have figured that out, the traditional way, if you're pedaling out, is to get your crank up into the power position, which is somewhere in this range, slightly forward at 12 o'clock position, and to take the bike and to push off and go on your way. I'm not going to show you that because I don't use that method. This is a heavy bike. If you happen to have it in the wrong gear, let's say you have it in a high gear and a slight upgrade, you're going to probably end up on the ground because most older people just don't have the strength to do that. So what I do, and I found that this helps my wife a lot, I rely on the throttle when I'm kicking out. It doesn't take much. By using this method, what I do is I take the pedal and put it at the 6 o'clock position all the way down. That way I can put my weight on that pedal when I start out. You may want to try this to find out which leg you feel more comfortable launching with. Some people feel more comfortable with the right on the ground. Some people feel more comfortable with the left on the ground. That's just something you need to determine. I've found out my body seems to dictate it the way I'm doing it now. Your brake is your friend. Just remember that. When you have stopped and you're not moving, practice applying a little of the brake. What it does, it keeps the bike from moving and it gives you a more stable platform. So until right before I get ready to launch, I leave the brake on. Now remember, when you give it throttle and you've got the brake on, you're not going anywhere. You have to release the brake for the throttle to work. So, that being said, what I do is just ease on the power, put it in PAS1. Really doesn't make any difference what assist mode that you have it in. I just ease on the throttle and put myself on the seat. And I kind of do a reversal when I get off. When I get off, bring this foot out and I step down while you're still moving forward. Don't wait for your bike to stop. If it does, you might be in a balancing act. I'll show you again. It's very easy, just takes a little practice. And since this is an e-bike, I suggest that you find you a nice grassy surface, level grassy surface. The reason I say this is, if you do happen to fall and you hit the ground, a grassy surface doesn't hurt nearly as bad as landing on the pavement. So I would suggest that you just find a nice grassy area that has a stable surface. Just practice it until you get it right. And remember, when you come to a stop sign or something, and leave the pedal in this position. If you come to a stop and dismount just like I did, it will be in the correct position. Don't sit on the bike. Hold your brake until you're ready to launch. Release your brake and give it a little bit of throttle. Then up and you're off. And then I'll stop in the opposite order. Come to the stop, easing on your brake. First step on the pedal, then off the seat, and your foot down and on the ground. And that's really all there is to it. All I can say is it takes practice. Another thing that you might want to do, if you're having problems and struggling to get on and off your bike, struggling to take off to the point where it's really becoming very challenging, the best thing to do is what I had to do with my wife. My wife was having a lot of problems. She fell a couple of times when we first got these, trying to take off and stop. The first time she tried to stop on the bike, she fell over. Second day she tried to get on it, couldn't get going and fell over. I showed her how to mount and dismount, but I could tell by looking that she just didn't feel comfortable doing it. So what I did with my wife's bike was I decided I'd go ahead and lower the seat so she could have her feet planted on the ground. This is contrary to all of your supposedly correct sitting height for saddles. I realize that. But you've got to remember, these electric bikes, as far as the human contribution power on this bike, is very little. You probably don't contribute about 10% when you're actually using your PAS mode. You're probably contributing, I'd say, about 10%. I don't think much more, really. That's been my experience right now. I've got a little over 300 miles on this bike, and that's the conclusion I've come to. So efficiency is really not that critical. We're not going to be riding these things 100 miles. I used to ride 100 miles, on a 10 speed, and I was concerned about the weight. You're riding sub 20 pound bicycles, and weight is very critical, especially on anything that spins. But these bikes are not efficient at all. What you're relying on is the assist motor power for the most part. That being said, the sitting height of the seat really doesn't mean as much. Now you want it to be comfortable. You don't want to fatigue yourself. or strain your knees. So you have to kind of make a personal judgment as to how this is affecting you. What I would recommend, if you're having a problem, is go ahead and drop your seat all the way down. This is a suspension seat post, so it doesn't go all the way down like a non-suspension seat post. You can go lower. I think about for most people, my wife is 5'4", and this is plenty low for her to be flat foot on the ground. What happens is, when it's set like that, she can sit on the seat, and she's like this. This may be a bad habit to get into if you're planning on eventually mounting and dismounting the proper way. But it will get you used to the bike. It will help you not to be afraid of the bike. You won't be as apprehensive stopping and starting. When we first got there, the wife would go 3 blocks out of the way so she wouldn't have to stop, because she just didn't want to stop and start. And that's understandable. She had a bad experience to start off with. Now she's pretty much over all of that. And on her bike, she's got about 150 miles. So she's getting used to it. But when the seat's down like this, you don't have any problems then. But I would still strongly recommend that you not try to launch under your own power. Use your throttle for initial boost, like so. Okay, so again, I'll show you how to mount and dismount, and this will conclude my demonstration how I feel you should mount or dismount your Lectric XP. If you're not having any problems and everything's fine, just forget it. If you are having problems mounting and dismounting, you might find this video to work for you.